Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Hi, my name is Zoe. That's Z-O or Z-O for those of you outside of the U.S. I can talk. Welcome back, friends. This is the 152nd episode of Backlit Cinema, the podcast. We take a look back at the movies of yesteryear, especially the movies of the latter half of the last millennium. If you like what you're about to hear, then tell your families, tell your friends, tell, you know what, just stay away from anyone wearing a creepy American president's mask. And you know what? There was something I was supposed to do before I started, and I'm going to do it right now. And I want to share something with you, something that had an impact on me for all of these years as we watch the movie that we're about to talk about. And it is this quote: "Fear causes hesitation, and hesitation will cause your worst fears to come true." All right, now that you know that this had some meaning for me, let me present to you someone I hope has meaning for you. This young man has had multitudes of podcasts, starting and then stopping and starting again on another show, because he's excited about the work that he's doing. His podcasts are incredible. The latest podcast he has is called Least Important Things. It sounds like an NPR documentary. It is an incredible listen. I want you to check out that show after you've checked out this show. The host of that show is with me now. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Luke Ferris.
Thank you, Zoe. Great to be back. Great to talk about Point Break. Oh my goodness, this movie. There's so much. We got a lot to get into. But
yes,
that quote sets the tone of what this movie is.
Yeah,
it was so fun to rewatch it, and I can't wait to talk to you about it.
You know what's funny is that whenever I watch this movie, I'm waiting for that quote to pop up. I think it's the quote that they use in the trailer, and I'm misremembering it because I thought it was hesitation will cause your worst nightmares to come true. For some reason, I thought it was nightmare, but it's not nightmare, it's fears. And I get why they use fears, but I like the way I remembered it.
Yes, you interpreted it. You took it for your own. And that's what this movie provides. It gives all these lines, memorable quotes, and meanings, and you can interpret them for your life in different ways.
I agree wholeheartedly. So, Luke, you've been in a podcast before. How have you been?
I've been great. I've been very busy. Like you mentioned, starting and stopping podcasts. So I put them all under one umbrella called Least Important Things, where we talk about everything from how do you choose your sports team to follow to an episode we just did about why do we love Keanu Reeves that I think fits in nicely to this Point Break discussion, as well as we do a movie rewatch series where we tackle more franchise focused and punish ourselves sometimes. Like right now we're watching all the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise in order. So we did that with Jurassic Park, Mission Impossible, Pirates of the Caribbean is the current one. And boy, oh boy, it's a slog. So if you like movies, you like talking about things that don't really matter, but actually matter, come on over to Least Important Things. We have a lot of fun. We have conversations like we're going to have today.
Yeah, absolutely. Now with this podcast, I deal with a lot of series, but I've not really watched one movie after the other for most of this show, but
because you're a wise man, so you're very wise.
Well, I only do it for the ones that I like anyway. So I've only done it twice. So I can't remember the first time I did it, but I think the first time I did it was with Star Trek. So within the first 6 films of the Star Trek franchise that deals with the original series, there's one that I didn't realize it was a thing. It's called the Genesis trilogy, because it's a trilogy that deals with the Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. It deals with the Genesis device. And that's why they call it, I think that's what they call it, the Genesis trilogy. Okay. So it's Star Trek II, Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, Spock is revived because of the effects of the Genesis device. And then Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. It really doesn't have anything to do with Genesis, but it is the first movie that features Spock, the full character of Spock, coming back to himself. And it's one of the movies, I think, did Leonard Nimoy direct that one? I think he directed that one.
I think so.
Yeah. Because I can't remember. I think he directed 2 films. I'm pretty sure he directed Star Trek 3, but I'm not exactly sure. But he definitely directed Star Trek 4. And then the thing about it is that, like in Star Trek 3, he wasn't really in that movie. He was, because he was the character was there, but Leonard Nimoy wasn't there. You didn't see him till the very end. So Star Trek 4 represented his return as a character to Star Trek, or as an actor to Star Trek. So I covered those 3 films back to back. And then the next one was Alien, the first 4 movies in Alien franchise. I like all of those movies, even Alien 3. I don't love it, mind you.
Love is a strong word.
It's a strong word. It's a strong word, but I appreciate it. It's more like I appreciate the movie. There are a lot of things that I like about it. Like I like Charles S. Dutton, and I like the end where Sigourney Weaver does a dive into, to sacrifice herself to save humanity. I like that. And then it was all thrown away with Alien 4 because the company is so greedy that they saved her genetics so that they could recreate her. I love that.
I just rewatched Resurrection and did a short video on my YouTube page. And wow, what a wild movie.
Yeah.
That is a ride. If you're a bit squeamish, maybe don't watch that one, because the baby xenomorph still haunts my dreams. That is a scary looking creature, a cool creature effect, but terrifying. I don't know if we needed that in that franchise.
That baby is a nightmare fuel. It's Sigourney encountering she's a clone anyway, so she's encountering the failed clones of them trying to create her. So that was terrifying. The aliens learning how to deal with the humans, because it's like they're not dumb animals; they're intelligent creatures. So they knew how to circumvent their captivity. So that was incredible. I just really like that movie. And it doesn't get a lot of love from I guess people in general, but I feel like they're missing something. And I can go on. We're not talking about that movie. Let's go.
We're already getting off track. We're going into different franchises.
Let's pull it back. Let's pull it back. So in your latest episode of Least Important Things, you were interviewed by your wife, and she asked some very intelligent questions. It's amazing that she can ask these questions because she already knows you. She knows these things about you, but she was able to ask them as if she needed to know. So I wanted to do some follow-up questions on some of the questions that she asked.
Yes.
So you listed your favorite books. So I wanted to ask, given that this is a movie podcast, do you have a favorite screenwriter?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think like one that always stands out to me is Lawrence Kasdan, and especially with Empire, as far as a writer and what's he brought to that project and other projects. He always stands out for me. And if you listen to that episode, I talk about my favorite movies, and if you know me at all, I definitely live in that 80s Spielberg Lucas realm. Like that's the foundation of a lot of my favorite stuff. So
right. Yeah, for me, answering, like if I were to talk about a favorite screenwriter, it'd be difficult. I'd probably fall back on somebody like Aaron Sorkin, because that's just the name off the top of my head. And I know that he's writing his movies, or maybe James Cameron, but I probably more like him as a director than a writer.
Yeah, I was thinking that Tarantino as a writer as well. I think he has a vernacular. I just actually read the novelization of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and it actually, his writing translated well to that kind of, he's basically paying homage to those book adaptations in the 80s and 90s where it was essentially a marketing tool, but his vernacular and his writing, it translates. It's not for everybody, but it translates well to text.
Right.
Compared to listening to him on a podcast, over an hour of Quentin Tarantino, it's a little bit too much.
It's a little much, right.
But reading his writing is a little bit better. It's more palatable.
You don't have to read it in his voice.
Yeah, no, you don't.
It's like let me imagine like Roy Detrice reading this, and it'll be palatable.
It's a little bit better.
Right. The other thing I have a problem with is you were able to answer the question like about your favorite books. That's also something that I can't do, because I've read so many books. It's like if I talk about like, what if I said that my favorite book was It? Maybe I might say that. But then again, I remember reading Encyclopedia Brown. Do I like Encyclopedia Brown better than I like It? Do I like uh, there's one called Moving Mars, kind of an obscure book. Do I like that better than something else that I read? It's hard, and some books I read multiple times. Some books I think are good, but then realize they're probably not that good, but I still love it. So it's,
But yeah, you can love them. Yeah, that's part
yeah,
of the
yeah,
fun. And I always say, for me, a lot of that best conversation, again, these are barbershop conversations. So like, that's why they're fun. You could talk
right,
about them all day and you can't define best and greatest.
yeah,
But a lot of times for me, it goes back to, will I rewatch this, reread this? Do I want to consume this over and over again? Because I think that's like really what is genuine for me, defines the best, because it brings me some sort of comfort or joy. And what the movie we're talking about today is one of those movies for me where I can always rewatch it, even if it's been 3 years. I get something new out of it, and I get delight out of it. And that's for me what defines best. But it's
yeah,
always a tough conversation.
yeah. You actually had a 5-way tie for, like, you listed your favorite books 1 through 5, and 5 was a 5-way tie.
Yes.
You cheated a little bit. You cheated.
Oh yes, I always will break the rules on that.
So one of the things you mentioned was that you have a buzzword. Your buzzword is fired up. So what brought that about? Is it just something that your family would say all the time?
I love that families, we all have like traditions and vernacular that we say, and maybe it's passed down from a grandparent. But I fired up, I don't know where that comes from, and maybe it was my dad was a coach when I was a kid, so like he would coach track and football and basketball, so it feels like a coach kind of saying. So maybe we just all said it as growing up as kids, and it's something I can't get out of my daily vernacular. So my wife will again keep me accountable. You can't say fired up for every description of someone that's excited or exuberated.
Right. I never thought of something that I say like continuously all the time, almost annoyingly so as a buzzword. But if I would have a buzzword or a buzz phrase, it would be right, right, right. 3 rights in succession. If you listen to this podcast, I say that all the time, annoyingly so. And then like when I'm editing the podcast and I listen, it's like, oh, I'm annoying myself now. Maybe I should edit some of these out.
But it's your call sign. See, as podcasters and people who have to edit their own stuff, we get more annoyed than listeners.
Right,
like,
right, absolutely.
Because we see it.
See,
like,
I just
gosh,
did it. I did 2 rights.
Right. This is a dangerous territory. So we're entering into dangerous territory.
Right. Your favorite movie is Star Wars, you had mentioned. So, and I like the answer you gave, because she asked you what's your favorite movie, and you said Star Wars, and then she was asking you about the episode, but you told her the movie, because before it was called an episode, it was called Star Wars. That was the whole name of the movie, and then they added stuff later on.
I'm glad you caught that, because I didn't want to go into that whole backstory with my wife, and I don't think she wanted to. So that's why I briefly mentioned, depends on your age.
Yes.
Depends on when you saw these movies, how you would title this first iteration of Star Wars, whether it's Star Wars or Star Wars: A New Hope, as George Lucas retitled it.
Yeah, as he retitled it. So have you seen like the original film, like before all of the editing is done? Because you're pretty young. It's kind of hard to get a hold of stuff.
I've rewatched it, but the first time I saw that my kind of peak viewing experience was that special edition re-releasing. I think those were always the ones that I saw, especially like those box sets. Like I had it on my shelf my entire childhood.
The VHS,
those special edition ones. So when I got into older, I was able to find a version online of the original Star Wars, with of course Han shooting first and all the things that were changed. So
the despecialized editions,
it's just crazy how much was changed that actually didn't need to be changed, and enhanced. Just shots of Tatooine. Like, did we need more of that? I guess we did.
Right. Here's the thing, is like, I appreciated that, because he always imagined Tatooine as a bustling city. So him adding that digitally, I appreciate that. I don't need it, but I appreciate what he did. And then he added like Jawas riding animals and stuff like that, making it more full.
Yeah.
And so when I watched that, I think I seen that in theaters, and what it did for, and when you watched it at the time, you know, it looked great. And then, as to get dated after a while, which is fine. It's like, I'm not totally put off by it. I'm not even put off by Han Solo and the Jabba the Hutt scene, because they did film it. They just didn't.
Yeah. Which I actually love that scene, and it makes sense. But
yeah, it's not bad. But they cut it for a reason. They cut it because it wasn't necessary. It slowed down the pace. Like Solo already mentioned Han Solo, Jabba the Hutt, so you didn't have to have that extra scene. So I understand why they cut it, but but it didn't bother me that they put it back in. So the only thing that really bothered me about the first one really was Han Solo shooting first. That never made any sense.
And I remember as a kid, it always looked weird, like the cutting of it to make him not shoot first. It just, even in my kid brain, I was like, what's going on here? Like, why did Greedo miss? Or
right.
Why,
why did he miss at point blank range?
Point blank, that doesn't make sense. So even as a kid, it was like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah. How is that professional bounty hunter pointing a weapon directly at the dude's head who's sitting across from him? How did he miss?
And I think like it was like, does Han Solo have force speed, or like what? Like,
yeah,
is he able to dodge
there was
it?
one, and I think in one of the edits, it looks like he kind of flinches to the left or the right. So
that's what I remember, and it was always confusing. It's like, well, I guess Han Solo is just that good. He can dodge bullets like Neo.
Yeah. So, you have good taste. So, what's your favorite movie genre? Is it science fiction and fantasy, or do you like drama? Where do you tend to go?
I love it all, right? But I think fantasy sci-fi is probably, and I guess more traditional hero stories is where I lean towards. Like I mentioned, that Lucas Spielberg kind of energetic, fun storytelling. But as I've gotten older, I've tried to push myself and push my boundaries. I've recently, like over the last 3 years, tried to get into the horror genre, which is not my sensibility, but there's so many great directors and creators in that genre right now. So I felt like guilty as a cinema fan. I'm like, I have to watch these movies because the best directors are working in this genre. So I've been dabbing my toes and really starting to get over my fear of being scared at scary movies.
I'll say this: I will not be bullied into watching horror.
It's hard. It is hard, and that's what mediums like ours, we're podcasting, where you can feel like you're watching along with people. Or I subscribe to Fangoria magazine, which has a lot of behind the scenes, how they make the special effects, and that helps me watch these movies because I can learn about them before I watch them.
Yeah.
But then you have directors that are doing more of these hybrid type of movies, like Jordan Peele or Ty West, that are creating a little bit of genre mixing, and it makes it easier to go to movies. Like we just saw Maxine, and my wife hadn't seen the other two movies, but she really enjoyed Maxine because it's not necessarily a slasher horror movie. It's more of a mystery movie.
Yeah.
So it makes it easier.
I like suspense thrillers. Like I feel like Jordan leans closer to suspense thriller and less to horror. It's like a suspense thriller with horrifying elements, and I've always liked that. I haven't seen, it doesn't seem like there are a lot of suspense thrillers in theaters nowadays, or it'll get like I feel like it's misgenred as horror. And I think that's just a way of getting people into the theater. Like some of my favorite ones from back in the day are Fatal Attraction. I think that's one of them. Basic Instinct, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
And I remember watching The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, but I don't know if I think I liked it. I can't remember. It's so long ago. And there's one that I missed called The Good Son with Macaulay Culkin. So I hear I
remember
good.
That one. that one's intense. Yeah, that whole genre's gone, really. I mean, I think maybe it's shifted to prestige TV, but it's kind of disappeared. A Simple Favor that came out a couple years ago, that one felt like that 90s thriller. It felt closer to that, but it's few and far between these days. That was really peaked in the 90s. Actually, this era of the movie we're talking about, like this, it was 90s action and then these more adult thrillers that were coming out in the theaters, like, and making a lot of money.
So I obviously I brought you here to talk about this great movie called Point Break. Came out in 1991. So we're going to go to the opening credits segments, and you can tell us more about this fantastic movie.
Over 30 bank robberies in 3 years is quite an accomplishment for an incredibly efficient band of bank robbers known as the Ex-Presidents. They burst into a bank wearing outlandish masks of Nixon, Johnson, Carter, and Reagan, and shouting demands while brandishing a variety of firearms. They take the money and leave without a trace. The FBI has been tracking them for months with no clue as to who the perpetrators are and no ability to predict their movements. In comes an unlikely named special agent, Johnny Utah, who, on a theory from his partner, Special Agent Pappas, goes undercover. Utah's mission is to immerse himself into surfer culture and try to find the most extreme criminals in history.
That is correct. This movie was released July 12th, 1991, produced by Largo Entertainment, JVC Entertainment Networks, and Johnny Utah Production. It grossed over $43 million in the US and Canada and over $83 million worldwide on a reported budget of $24 million. Now, I like to adjust that for inflation. So had it come out today, it would have grossed $99 million in the US and Canada.
Wow.
And $191 million worldwide. Yeah, you say wow now, but it's like its budget would have been $55 million. So if you only make $99 million out of $55 million, you're not really making a profit at that point.
Actually, yeah, today's that's not really that big of a win.
Yeah, just barely breaking even. But see, what saved them was the international market. They made an extra like 50 million internationally. So that really, well, actually, I don't even want to say 50 million, almost 100 million internationally. So they did pretty good overseas. So that gave them a pretty good profit, but they needed that international market, and that could be an issue, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah,
in spite of all that, it seems that they had intended to make a sequel, but just never did it. It just never materialized. And I kind of like that because
yes.
I think that, you know, the end of the movie, the cliche of the cop like throwing away his badge, that should be the end of the series. That shouldn't. let's leave that character alone, and they did. So that was pretty cool. So let us know who's starring in the movie.
Of course, Patrick Swayze as Bodie. You know him from Roadhouse, Ghost, Donnie Darko, Red Dawn. Episode 62, you did Roadhouse.
Yeah.
Just a legend, an absolute legend.
Yeah, that was you know what's funny about that movie is that upon rewatching it, I realized, oh, this movie really isn't that good. It's which is like I enjoyed it because it's like a collection of cliches but yeah. I remember when that movie first came out, it was like I thoroughly enjoyed that movie. So when people when they made the remake of Roadhouse, and I'm going to get a lot of flack for saying this, but a lot of people were like, oh, Roadhouse didn't need to be remade. It's a classic movie. It's like, you can't mess with it. And I'm thinking to myself, oh yeah, you can absolutely mess with it. It wasn't, yeah. It didn't make that much money when it first came out. It wasn't, it's kind of a, you know, a weird movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. And I think a lot of people we just collectively enjoyed it, but it wasn't well crafted. It wasn't well put together. Yeah. But it's like being younger, you know, you take it because it has a lot of things that we enjoyed about it. It's like, it's just Patrick Swayze's personality really comes through in that movie. And it's like the action was awesome and everything. But overall, when you look at, when I remember when I did my rewatch, I was like, oh yeah, I see why I didn't break the box office, right? I understand. Yes. It's like I will never not like this movie, but I understand why it wasn't, it wasn't a blowout success. That it's one of those things where I thought it was a huge box office bonanza, but when I go and look at the numbers, and it just wasn't.
No, and it's the same thing with Point Break. Like these are movies from an era where they really grew over time with popularity because of the VHS market and the rental market, and then syndication on TV. That's where I first watched Point Break
Yeah,
and Roadhouse, was watching them on basic cable television replayed, and that's where these movies like continue to have legs over
yeah,
time. They weren't maybe huge blockbusters right away, but they continued to be played on basic cable and rentals all the time, and people found them.
yeah, yeah. I think that's how I watched Roadhouse. I definitely watched it on DVD, but I don't know if I watched it on regular television. But I remember watching it. I don't know. Somebody had it at home. It was like, oh, let's check this out, and it was like, oh, and we just thought it was one of the most awesome movies ever made. So, did you happen to catch the remake?
No, I didn't. I did not, and I'm not as bullish about that. Where the Point Break, I don't know if we call it remake in 2015 or 2016. I refused that
Yeah, yeah.
movie.
Me
Like
too.
I don't believe that exists. But Jake Gyllenhaal, major star. Like it sounds like they might make a second one. So
Yeah.
I think it did well. And again, I was like, okay, yeah, that fits for a streaming, like kind of remake. I'm fine. I'm excited to see it. It's on my list. So
Yeah.
I've heard kind of mixed reviews.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that one has as much historical legs as the original.
Yeah. All I can tell you is that I liked it. I can't tell you about anybody else's experience, but I enjoyed it. I thought the action was awesome, and I thought that Jake Gyllenhaal did a fantastic job. He absolutely carried that movie, and it's a very different character from the original, and I like what they did with that character. So I encourage you to check it out and form your own opinions. You're going to watch it anyway, so I'm only pushing you in the right direction.
Yes.
So the next star is the incredible Keanu Reeves. He plays Johnny Utah. You may have seen him in Speed. We covered that in episode 46. And Constantine. I think we did Constantine. I can't remember. I didn't check. And The Devil's Advocate and Little Buddha, a movie I know nothing about, but I was looking, I was doing research, and I was looking at the pictures of this movie. It's like, first of all, it's a movie I've never heard of, and second of all, it was like, oh, this looks like a cute movie. I might want to watch this.
Yeah, he did a lot of he did a lot of small art house movie. He's got a very, very eclectic IMDb page. Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
There's a lot there. People don't realize they know the big names. This is obviously one of his bigger name movies that people love.
Yeah.
But he's done a lot of interesting projects throughout his career, especially early on. Before he was cast in this role, he was still more of an indie kind of star dramatic actor. He wasn't the action star that we know of him today.
Right. The other thing is that so you have like The Devil's Advocate. I hadn't seen Constantine. I haven't seen. He's been in a lot of big movies. And when I watched Speed, I was paying particular attention, not Speed, but Point Break. I was paying particular attention to his acting because he gets a lot of flack for his acting style or whatnot. But I was watching, I was like, he's pretty good in this. I actually like him in this movie. I don't understand people's problems with it because people really love casting Keanu Reeves. And I think that it's because he's really easygoing and really easy to work with. I think that's why directors are constantly casting him in films. So he really works well in this movie. What did you think of his acting?
Oh, I love it. Again, I did a full episode on why do we love Keanu Reeves? Why is this myth, this legend continue to grow over time? Why he's had different renaissance throughout his career. And a lot of it comes to he's not working too hard on camera. He almost is this avatar that we as an audience put our face on. And that's why he does so good in these roles of like fish out of water, where he's again the new FBI agent, Neo. He comes in and we are brought in with him, and he's not acting at us. He's bringing us along on the journey. And then I think it's just charisma. I think the way he acts with his face is very underrated. I don't think he's like the greatest dialogue giver of all time. And that's why a lot of his best films, you remember him for either the one or two words or the whoa of it all. But it's really the way he's able to, I think, have that intensity, that charisma, and sometimes humor, right? There's a lot of humor in this movie. Like him and Busey are dynamic together.
Yes,
Like the
yes, yes.
bromance, you can feel it through the screen, like immediately, which I love about this movie is there's no 30 minutes of the old cop being a jerk to the new cop. Like
Right.
they have that scene where they yell at each other, but they're bonded immediately. Like as soon as Utah is joking with him, and when they're in the pool, like he gets it. Pappas gets it. He's like, I like this guy. He's a young punk, but I like him.
Right, right, right.
So their chemistry, I think, was incredible, and that's what I think Keanu does. Is like you said, people love working with him, and I think the audiences love seeing him and can feel that energy.
Yeah, he definitely brings it. Well, actually, that their chemistry together, as you mentioned, was palpable. Especially since I really love Gary Busey. As a matter of fact, why don't you tell us more about
Yeah,
Gary
Gary
Busey?
Busey as Pappas, also in Buddy Holly's story and Lethal Weapon, which you guys covered in episode 36, and Soldier. Just one of those character actors that is people know him for who he is and his weird quirkiness more than they do his characters. But he's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like he basically acts the same way in every movie. And it's like when when I go to a movie and he's in it, I expect to see Gary Busey, and I want him to Busey it up, as it were.
Yes.
It's
Like, and you want a movie that allows it. Like
yeah,
this movie fits
yeah,
well with him. Like it's they're not trying to be too serious. It's fun, and it's a perfect comparison. Next to, you wouldn't think it, but him and Reeves are so well together because they're different, but they share this quirky unity. I would love to hear backstory, like how they got along off screen while they're making this movie. I think Keanu Reeves, pretty much everyone likes working with him, but it seems like they probably had a lot of fun
yeah,
making this
yeah.
movie together.
Um, as long as you don't cast Busey in something like as the Emperor of the Universe in Dune, he'll be awesome. He'll be fantastic. Because as much as I thoroughly loved both of the most recent Dune movies, I don't like the casting of the Emperor.
What I say, I get say Denis Villeneuve gets, that's his one error he
Yeah,
gets.
yeah, that's
I'm like, he gave us one of the best adaptations of all time. I'm
yeah.
gonna let him have that one kind of probably misstep.
That's
Out of all the things he could have
yeah.
screwed up, you know what? I'm sure in his head when he read the book as a kid, he was like, Christopher Walken's
Yeah.
if that was his one indulgence, that he just was like, I don't care what anybody thinks. I don't care how this looks. I just want to have, it would be like having Busey in that movie.
Yeah,
It does
yeah.
keep you out of it because Christopher Walken's kind of that same territory where he's walking. He's not he's not a character. It's him. Like you can't take
Yeah,
him out of
yeah,
the context of who he is as a iconic person
yeah.
and just his delivery, his mannerisms, and how he speaks. And it's the same kind of it's smaller here, but it works well in Point Break.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason I brought that up is because when I think of people like or actors like Gary Busey and Christopher Walken, and how they're great when they're in their element, and how they're not so great, and if you try to make them stretch out of their comfort zone, and I could see Christopher Walken struggling with his walkiness in Doom.
Guys, we gotta destroy Paul Atreides.
Right,
That's my
right.
horrible walking.
So up next is Lori Petty. She played Tyler. She was in Tank Girl, Free Willy, and Poetic Justice. I barely watched Tank Girl. I think I've only seen clips of it, and I have never seen Free Willy. And I've watched Poetic Justice, but I don't remember her in it. But I always associate her with this movie. I know she's been in a whole bunch of other products. Oh, and A League of Their Own. That's another movie that she's in.
Right.
That I really like her in. And I know she's in Orange is the New Black, but I only just found that out doing research on Lori Petty. Because it's like one of the things like, oh, I wonder whatever happened to her. Oh, she's been here all this time. She never left.
Right. Right. Yeah, she's probably out of the three main leads, she's the one that probably didn't go on to have as more of an iconic as career, but obviously still working at actress and doing great. But I think she's well cast. She's very 90s girl. Like, I mean, this is steeped 90s. You know, I feel like she could have gone on stage and started rocking out with a guitar. You know, like very punk, has the look. It makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, then we have John C. McGinley as Ben Harp. He was in 7, Platoon, and 42.
And that entirely. Nope, nope. I can't. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. Let me think about this. Nope, can't remember. No, he was the small. He was the agent, the chief agent dude, right? He
Yes.
was Gary Busey's boss.
Yes, people would know him from Scrubs.
Yeah, most people know him from Scrubs. Right? Okay, I remember now.
Yeah.
The smart. He got punched out at the end of the movie because, of course, he does.
Yeah. He plays a great. He's the ultimate dick. Like he's just like
in
one
most
note.
Right, in most TV shows and movies, he's just asking people to punch him in the face.
Yes. He is a punchable face, and he plays it well.
Yeah. Up next is James LaGrosse. He plays Roach. He's also been in Drugstore Cowboy, Certain Women, and The Last Winter.
John Philbin, Nathaniel, Return of the Living Dead, Children of the Corn, and Soul Surfer.
We have Borges. I hope I'm saying that right. Christopher. He plays Gromit, and he's also been in The Human and The Bondage.
And then Julian Reyes as Alvarez, Predator 2, and Die Hard 2. Wow, that's a good sequel lineup.
Yeah, absolutely.
Predator 2 and Die Hard 2. That's good.
Yeah. Some people might say they don't like Predator 2, but I'm like, Predator 2 works for me. There are so many things that happen in a movie that were transformative.
I love that movie. That's an overlook. Obviously, the first Predator is amazing, but Predator 2, don't sleep on that one. That's a great, especially the ending is so strong. I think obviously the first Predator ending with the face and the mud. I mean, that's great, but Predator 2 is a really cool ending. I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't seen it, listeners.
Right. Yeah. A lot of things happen in Predator 2 that is noteworthy. Up next is Daniel Beer. He played Babbitt. He's also been in Dying Young and Creepshow 2.
And then we have Chris Penderson, Bunker, Twin Peaks, Fire Walk with Me, and Suburbia.
Vincent Klein, he played Warbird. He's also been in Cyborg and Double Dragon.
And then the big cameo kind of celebrity appearance is Anthony Kiedis as Tone. He's also in The Chase and Fist. And more people know him as the lead singer of the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yes. And he was in the movie giving it away now. And apparently when he was in Fist, he was, I guess, working under the name Cole Dammit. He's got a couple of movies where he appeared, or TV shows or something like that, where he appeared under that name. So I don't know if he changed his name or he just was using a pseudonym. Not sure what's going on there. But there's the most famous trivia about Anthony Kiedis about this movie I've included in the trivia section. So we'll get there when we get there.
What's interesting is that Keanu Reeves worked with him and Flea. So he's worked with two members of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Flea was in My Own Private Idaho. So, and Reeves tells the story of how he was trying to learn bass at that point because Keanu Reeves has a band and he's a bass player. And one of the days after they had their set and did all their takes, he's like, just went to Flea's trailer and was like, "Hey, can you teach me how to play bass?" And I was like, "Man, that's iconic." A young Keanu Reeves and a young Flea playing bass together in a trailer,
right,
on a movie set. That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. So what was he playing in his band before he learned how to play bass? Do you know?
Well, he was just starting to learn.
Oh, he was just starting. Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't in the band. That band formed, I think, around the same time. And the reason the band formed is one of the other band members met Reeves in a grocery store, and they started playing hockey together because Reeves had just moved from Canada, and this guy was wearing a Detroit Red Wings shirt, and he was like, "Hey, where do people play hockey in LA?" And they started playing hockey together, and then found out that Reeves was trying to play bass, and they just formed a group. So that was kind of like in that early days when Reeves just was here in Hollywood and just being the guy that he is, just making friends, doing things, and just
trying out
iconic
stuff.
Career. I know, it's just like he's so casual about it when he talks about it. I was like, wow, it must have been a great time.
So, who directed this form of entertainment?
Catherine Bigelow. You know her as the Oscar-winning director from The Hurt Locker. She also did Zero Dark 30, Strange Days, Detroit, and Blue Steel.
So I've only seen a couple of movies on this list, and when you look at how people rate her movies, at least on IMDb, she has relatively highly rated movies. So she really doesn't miss. She hasn't directed a whole bunch of movies, but when she does, she doesn't really miss. She knows what she's doing. I remember watching The Hurt Locker, and man, that was a very impactful movie. It was around the time of my deployment, so I can't remember if I watched it before I got deployed or right after I got deployed, but I remember being angry at some of the characters in that movie. She had Hawkeye and the Falcon just trying to get along in that movie, and,
yes,
and barely God, able to.
In that too. I believe that the Hurt Locker, it was a pretty low budget movie, and it was a big kind of surprise winner of the Oscars that year.
Yeah,
and I think that the big deal was she beat out her ex-husband for Best Director.
James Cameron. Didn't realize that. I didn't know they were competing
for Avatar. Yeah.
Oh wow.
The thing is that's kind of the story.
That's why I watched it, because of the buzz that surrounded it. Partly because it's a military focused movie. The other part is that wow, it's like everybody's talking about this, so let me go watch it. And then and when I watched it, I was impacted, and ended up not liking what's his name? Jeremy Renner's character.
Yeah. That's a great performance. I mean, it's incredible. Like we really think about him as Hawkeye now, but that's a very different character than Hawkeye.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's as a matter of fact, opposite of Hawkeye.
Right. And as a matter of fact, with some of the stuff he did is especially like when he's on base, like leaving the base and stuff like that. I'm watching a movie like Boo Boo from Yogi Berra going, the Rangers are going to like that. You can't just leave base like that.
You knew from an insider's perspective, like, that's not good, man.
Yeah. You're going to get in trouble. It's such a narc. And then
it's a great movie though. It is. And I think she's such a great action director, which I think a lot of fans of hers want her to get back, would love to see her to get back into more, because I've seen The Hurt Locker. There's a lot of intense action sequences, and in Zero Dark 30 there is some, but she hasn't done anything quite even close to Point Break in a long time. I know I would love to see her get back in doing more of a traditional action movie.
Yeah.
I'm surprised honestly that Marvel or Disney has not forked over some dollars to get her to direct one of the big superhero movies.
Yeah.
Maybe that's more of her, just like she seems like she's a person that just she does what she wants, and she's not going to just go for the easy money.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be like the actors. I do one for me, and then I do one for them.
Yeah.
The other movie I saw was Strange Days. That's another movie that was highly impactful. It kind of shows that she can, if she chose to, dip into like the sci-fi elements of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Really enjoyed that. So yeah, it would be interesting if you got someone like her to direct either a Star Wars or a Marvel or something like that, to see what she's able to do with that. So this movie was written by Rick King and W. Peter Iliff. And King and Iliff, they wrote the story, with Iliff writing the screenplay. King has also written Hot Shot, not to be confused with Hot Shots, and Hard Choices and Off the Wall, while Iliff wrote Under Suspicion, Varsity Blues, The Enforcer, and Patriot Games. So I'm not familiar at all with any of King's work, but I know about some of Iliff's work, and I actually seen Patriot Games. So yeah, this movie was good. And that's all I can say about their
some
writing.
lines, some of these lines, we'll get to them. I wrote some of these lines down.
Right.
It's funny. When I was doing the research as well, I couldn't believe he wrote Patriot Games, because that's one of my favorite movies. I love Patriot Games. It comes a year after, and that is a restrained, serious spy. Harrison Ford. It is a really well written movie. Like, there's great dialogue. James Earl Jones in it. You got some amazing acting and writing. And I'm not saying that Point Break doesn't, but there's some lines in here that are it's not the tone of Patriot Games. So I guess Varsity Blues, that's probably a little bit closer. Yeah. But I was like, I don't know where they came up with some of these lines. Some of them you see, I think, improv, but holy cow, this was it's one of those movies where like no human talks like this, but there's some of the most memorable lines. Like, you'll never forget them.
Well, it might be because of the next thing I'm about to read. So, officially uncredited because of an unresolved issue with the Writers Guild of America, James Cameron and Catherine Bigelow rewrote the final script together. So that might have something to do with it.
There might be some James Cameron.
Right. Not that he's a bad writer, but there's some shenanigans going on there. Definitely.
There are. Yeah. From what I remember, he was heavily involved in kind of the background of this movie, helping get it made and stuff. But again, this is a he said, she said. I think Cameron has said that he has been kind of the mastermind behind some of these movies, and he was really a shadow director. And obviously, I don't think Bigelow agrees with that. So there's some mystery behind this duo. That is no longer together, obviously.
Right. Well, I guess the thing is like, can she direct good movies without his input, without Cameron's input? And I think she's proven that she can do that. So
yeah, and I think The Hurt Locker was kind of the
I
don't know, little revenge tour for her. I think it was like definitively, I don't need him to make movies.
Right.
This
absolutely.
this is a different era, but it shows, like, I mean, the 90s weren't that long ago, but there wasn't that many female directors. Definitely not that many female directors that were directing a big action blockbuster movie like this. So it is pretty unique, even still today.
Yeah. To see that. We're as a matter of fact, I can't even really think of a female directors directing a lot of like action heavy movies. There are some who, like, there is I can't remember her name, but she directed Wonder Woman and
Patty Jenkins. Yeah,
Patty
she's
Jenkins.
probably the most well known female action director.
But was she directing action films before Wonder Woman?
No, I'm trying to remember what she did. Oh, she did Monster. No, so she was doing dramas.
Yeah. That's what usually happens. And that's what happens with a lot of Marvel directors. They tend to come from backgrounds where they're not directing like huge action movies. It's like they'll direct one or two indie projects and it's like, come over here and direct this $100 million movie. We know you've never had a budget that big before, but we really like we like what you've done over there with that, all of these intense dramas. So come over here and direct this action heavy movie. We know that you'll fit right in, and sometimes it works.
Sometimes it doesn't. I think Madam Web is an example of that. I don't know if that was a female director.
Marvel. That's Sony.
That's true.
I think another example might be the Marvels. I forgot who directed that, but I like the Marvels, and it's probably because of the algorithm keeps feeding me. But on Threads, you see a lot of people are discovering Marvels, and they don't understand all of the hate and dismay around it. But I'm like, yeah, you're right. Marvels was good, and I don't understand.
I think it was a poorly marketed movie in Fatigue. That's
well, I don't necessarily agree with Fatigue, but I do agree that it was poorly marketed. But that has to do with what you call it. At the time, the writer's strike was just beginning, so that might have something to do with it. But the only reason I say I don't agree with Fatigue is, like, on the one hand, people are probably tired of certain types of superhero movies, and then on the other hand, I'm up there watching The Boys like it's going out of style. So I'm like, apparently I am not tired of it. And
Yes.
so there's something I
That's
think.
good. We all have our stuff that we'll never
Right,
say
right, right.
no to.
I think here's what I'll concede. I'll concede that there's a particular type of fatigue. And I think what it is that people don't want to have to watch 6 movies to find out what's going on in one
Exactly.
movie. And
Exactly.
and I think that if Marvel kind of like loosen up some of the connections and have the movies be a little bit more independent so that they're not dependent on previous works, that will help bring audiences. Well, it will help alleviate some of the superhero fatigue that people say that they're experiencing, even though I still don't think it's a thing. It's like, because people just want good stories at the end of the day. And
right. They'll pay for it, whether it's in a superhero storytelling tone or not. But I always think it's funny that superhero movies, especially the MCU, has kind of gone full circle where it's almost like comic books, like the way that all the stories interline, the time travel. I'm like, they're actually making really true comic book pieces where if you dive into comic books and start reading those, it's very hard to keep up with what's going on. Like, you need to do a lot of research. You can't just dive in and issue of the X-Men from 2002 and expect to know what's going on.
Yeah, right.
And the movies are kind of becoming that way, so it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, what they did back in antiquity, like before, like the way modern comic books are being written. Back in the day, what they used to do is, like, if somebody said something that referenced a different story in a different comic, they'll say something like Iron Man will say something to Captain America. It's like, yeah, remember that time that we had that conflict with Dr. Doom? And then there would be a little blurb at the bottom. It's like, see issue 22 of Fantastic Four, where Iron Man and Captain America fought Dr. Doom, right? So there will always be these references to other comics, just in case you needed to find out about that fight that they had with Dr. Doom. Or,
they need to do that for Marvel movies, is just have it in the
yeah.
Just have it just letting you know where to go, what movie to watch.
Right. Just freeze the frame real quick and then flash the words like, see Marvel's see the movie Marvels, right? Where this happened, or
Hour 135,
right,
or 135.
Watch Miss Marvels for more context, and then they continue the scene.
One day with streaming, we might get there.
Yeah,
they might be able to do that. Okay, let's do the score by Mark Isham, who did Of Mice and Men, Nowhere to Run, Fire in the Sky, Time Cop, The Net, and Blade.
So, have you seen any of these movies?
I've seen The Net and Time Cop. Of course, I've seen Blade. It's one of my favorite movies. So this is one of those scores that it's not really super memorable. But sometimes that's good, right? Sometimes a score doesn't need to be the hero of the story. It just needs to support what's going on. Yeah,
I agree. I think the score in this, it was good enough to help bring you along for the ride. It's not something that you're supposed to be humming after you leave the theater. And then the other thing was that it was interspersed with the popular songs that were there,
right?
None of which I remember. I don't even know if those were like songs that were like, they weren't songs that were on top of the charts. I don't remember any of the songs in this movie, so it's not like they used like a popular needle drop, like a song that you would know is but they fit well within the context of the movie, so it's fine. It's fine. It didn't sound generic. It wasn't like necessarily hummable, but at the same time, it wasn't generic. So I can work with that. And I haven't seen any of these movies in such a long time. And the only ones I actually seen is Time Cop, Blade, and that's it. So I remember Blade. I remember Blade was a lot of like techno music. That's the only thing I remember.
Techno heavy. Yeah, it was techno heavy, and it fits well, and it's perfect.
But I don't remember Time Cop at all. So I guess to get a real flavor for how his music is, I think that would probably be the movie to check out, or Nowhere to Run, which I've never seen. Maybe check that out. I don't know, but he's John Williams. He's not. He's just
no,
but he's good enough where he's not generic. So that's it for the opening credits. And if you got any input, go ahead and write and let us know what you thought. And my only announcement is just to reemphasize that because of the move, I'm moving to reopen my eBay shop. I've creatively called it Bazaar de Alonso. So you go to eBay, you look up Bazaar de Alonso, and I'm going to start putting stuff on there, because I have like two pizza cutters. What do I need with two pizza cutters? I have three strainers. I don't need all three strainers. Just a bunch of knickknacks, some stuff. You're like, oh, and then a bunch of ceramics. Yeah, just I'm working, or some action figures, working towards trying to. I want to avoid throwing stuff in the trash. I want to try to at least hand it to someone who might appreciate it more than I do. We'll see what happens. It could be that the whole venture is a total failure and I end up throwing everything in the trash anyway. So
help Zoe clean up all the boxes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And save the planet by not throwing it in the trash.
Right. The landfill is full enough. So that's it for my announcements. And now we're going to talk about our 5 favorite parts. All right, Luke, why don't you start us off? Let us know what one of your 5 favorite parts are. We'll try to keep count or not. And then and talk about why we love this movie so much.
There's a scene that I'm going to buy a t-shirt from this moment in the movie. I looked it up before we recorded. Right before they're staking out the bank, and it's a line. There's so many lines in this movie. I remember watching this movie with my brother. So my brother and I will share these lines back and forth. We'll just embed them. But at one point, Busey's character is like, "Hey, I'm hungry. There's a great shop around the corner that has meatball subs. And give me 2 subs." Keanu Reeves' character Utah goes reluctantly because they don't feel like the robbery is going to happen. And as Utah is walking away, Busey's character leans out and says, "Utah, get me 2." It is that is an improv line by Busey, and I don't know what it is about that and these meatball sandwiches that I remember watching this and then immediately had to go to Subway and get a meatball sandwich. And it was like, I don't know why it'll always stay with me as like one of my favorite moments. And then to tie it back to more of the cinema outside of this iconic line in my life, that chase scene is so great. It is one of the best shot action chase scenes on foot. I was reading about the Steadicam operator was using like a 35 millimeter kind of like customized Steadicam to keep up with Keanu Reeves running through these backlots in LA, and it's still a gorgeously shot sequence. So I guess that's one. It's starting off with Utah, get me 2 meatball subs, and then into the foot chase scene, which is fun. Like you don't see it a lot in action movies where you have just like a very grounded, raw foot chase scene for an extended period of time. But so that stands out to me as one of my favorite moments.
Yeah. They do tend to be exhausted. Like I get tired watching a foot chase scene. I start getting out of breath. It's like and I'm thinking of myself, I can't run that long. It's like, and then plus they're jumping over fences and walls and whatnot. I was like, oh my goodness, I would have a hard time.
Yeah, imagine carrying a camera. I was like, gosh, that like
and the dude is carrying a camera. Amazing. So yeah, he's in good shape.
Yes.
So one of my favorite scenes is the bank robbery scene, the first bank robbery, where they basically show off their technique for robbing a bank. They burst in, they got these huge, outrageous masks. They're pointing their guns, they're shouting orders, and they efficiently and quickly collect the money, timing how much time they have before the police respond to the incident, and then they get in their car and they vanish. But one of them takes the time to moon the camera before he leaves, right?
So, which is very punk rock, but yeah, 90 seconds. They get in and out in 90 seconds. Yeah, so one of the lines is, quote, "Like a virgin on prom night, they vanish." That's what DC's character says. That's just one of the insane lines that he says.
Yeah, that is kind of an insane line because usually you would say something like, like a fart in the wind or something, but that was
Yeah.
already used. That was used in the Shawshank Redemption. So I guess you
Yeah.
can't say that, but like a virgin on prom night. So now I'm trying to contextualize that. It's like what situation, what circumstance would necessitate somebody believing that virgins vanish on prom night? So I guess the idea is you go to prom with your date who happens to be a virgin, you dance or whatever, and then you think that you're taking her home to your place, but then she's gone, she's vanished because she's not trying to lose your virginity to you. So I guess that's what we're supposed to believe.
You can't read too much into these lines. There's a lot of them. Like Blue Flame Special, Young, Dumb, and Full of Cum. That's one of
Oh
them.
yeah, yeah.
Air got dirty and the sex got clean, talking about LA. I mean, there's some of these lines you're like, what does this even mean? And then tied to the sub scene, Busey's character says, "I'm so hungry I could eat the ass off a dead rhino." I mean, that is
that's pretty extreme.
What does that even mean?
Because he's taking, when people say, "I'm so hungry I can eat a horse," so he's taking that and he's kind of extrapolating that.
It's just there's. It's why this movie, it shouldn't work. This movie shouldn't work, but it does.
Right,
like with lines like those, it just fits. I don't know why. It just still fits.
Right. And I think it's which characters are saying them. I think Boosie's character is saying most of those outlandish things.
It just works because that's who he is.
Yeah, right. Oh, and to take it back to your the meatball, what's his name? I'm trying to remember the character's name. And it's flaking on me. I should know. Johnny Utah, when he goes to buy the two, he actually buys 4 sandwiches because he buys 2 for his partner, 2 for himself, and he gets 2 drinks. So it's like 6 items altogether, and he only pays $7.84. And for most people, they would say something like, "Oh man, it'd be great if I could pay $7.84 to pay for just those items." But when you factor in inflations, it comes out to $18 thereabouts. $18 a day. So I still feels like
not bad though. That's still pretty good. That's not bad. That's a good deal.
That feels about right. If it were 2 small sandwiches, I think if you went to Subway and tried to buy that order, that would be closer to like $22, $23.
Oh yeah.
But if you bought the 12-inch, that's definitely closer to $30.
Oh, yeah.
But if you just buy the 6-inch, you could get away with paying something like 18 or maybe even less. But yeah, so it's comparable, is what I'm saying.
Give me 2. Just always give me 2.
So these sandwiches must be small, which is why he asked for 2 sandwiches. So what's another one of your favorite parts?
We have meatball. We have the opening bank robbery. Next for me is the skydiving sequence. Still stood up for me. I mean, it's just incredible. And I think I believe we'll probably get into it in the more of the fun facts and trivia. But Swayze was an active skydiver, and specifically the shot when they're in the plane and he jumps out. And even rewatching it again, I was like, holy cow, Patrick Swayze just jumped out of a plane.
Right.
Like it's like he just did that. I mean, it was shocking to see that. Of course, we have Tom Cruise doing his crazy stunts, but it was that level just to see it. It was so cool.
Yeah. It all looked really authentic, and it added to the authenticity of the scene. And so, those were great moments. That's especially but I especially liked the end, like the last skydiving scene when Bodie was trying to get away, and he left Utah in the plane without a parachute, and Utah had to dive after him. That was more impactful for me than the first skydiving scene, and rightfully so, because diving out of a plane without a parachute is a little bit crazy.
It's insane. And my wife was walking in while I was watching that sequences, and she's like, "How did they do that?" It's like, and I was like, "Yeah, it's really impressive. Like, to even, it's almost 30 years on. It's still impressive when they shoot these skydiving scenes." And fun to look at. Like it ages well because it's just crazy what they did. Even this just being stunt people doing it.
Yeah.
But you can tell when your lead actor is a skydiving enthusiast, it shows and it comes through on screen.
Yeah.
Because they really enjoy it and they shoot the crap out of it and it looks great.
Yeah, not too many of those. Not too many actors that are enthusiastic about skydiving.
Yeah. Tom Cruise is probably one of the other few
right,
who's doing that actively.
Wait a minute. Didn't they do something like that in one of the one with I can't remember.
Cavill. So Fallout they did
Fallout, right.
I forget what it's called, but they did a specific jump, Halo jump. They did a Halo jump and recorded it. So that's kind of that is the evolution of this. Like at the time when this came out, this was in a Bond film. They did do another pretty impressive skydiving sequence, but this was kind of the premiere one. But that scene in Fallout kind of took it to the next level as Mr. Cruise does.
Absolutely. So another thing I liked, I'll just list one of my favorite things about this movie was Gary Busey. Just Gary Busey in the movie, just being Gary Busey. I enjoy him just doing his best. It's almost like he's doing an impersonation of himself, right?
Yes.
He's dynamic. He's energetic. He's exciting to watch. He's charismatic, and I enjoyed him in this movie. He's definitely one of the reasons that you need to watch this movie. It's just watch him work, right? As the kids say today, watch him, let him cook.
Let him cook. Some meatball subs. But I compared to some of the other movies, he's really lovable in this movie. I think him pairing with Keanu is great. I think because he's that veteran cop, but he's not as he's ambitious. Like he has this crazy theory and this young kid believes him. And so he's different than maybe other films. And I really like him in this film because you don't hate him. He's not annoying. He's not like antagonistic. He's optimistic in a lot of ways. And he's actually a pretty good mentor to Johnny Utah, which is, even though he does push back on him, but it's really, he's a lovable, memorable character.
Yeah.
Because of that. I just love how he's placed in this movie and written or given the space to cook.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, with Gary Busey, he tends to play characters in the gray area, if not outright an antagonist. So like Under Siege, he was like a straight up antagonist.
Yeah.
And he was in the movie Predator 2. He's more in the gray area in that one, where he feels like he might be an antagonist, but no, he's trying to do the right thing, but he's kind of going about it in a sloppy way. But it's he's always interesting when he plays a character. So he's one of my favorite things about this movie.
There was a moment where they're doing the night stakeout on the Anthony Kiedis house, and the other detectives come in for the day shift, and he gives him a cold pizza, and he's like, "Cold pizza for you. It's good for breakfast."
yeah.
I was like, that felt improvised. It was just great. He just gives him a cold pizza. It's just all those little moments throughout this film that are just when you rewatch it, it's just better and better because you catch them, and it's just these hilarious moments that he brings to the screen.
Right. And it makes sense because these were the same two agents that were making fun of him and his theories, right? So he's just giving it back to them.
All right. So we have the subs, the meatball subs, foot chase. We have the opening bank, skydive, Gary Busey, and then we're doing 5 each or 5 total?
5 each.
Okay. I'm going to do Swayze and Reeves. I think Bodhi, Utah, their dynamic is so great, especially towards the end of the movie when you basically see them going pound for pound with crazy kamikaze eye, adrenaline. And there's a scene where I think he reveals that he's kidnapped his girlfriend and they're in the back of the van. And again, like I said earlier, there's that intensity in both of them and just visually how they're acting. You can just feel the tension and the passion. And I think that's why this movie is so iconic and has stood the test of time. It's because of those two actors. I think they really elevated this movie from like a decent 90s action movie to a great movie to a cult movie that has a huge following of fans, because these two actors are going at each other, but also these two characters admire each other, respect each other, but they both have lines that they're either not willing to cross or willing to cross. And so that's a huge highlight for me.
Yeah, that relationship was bananas. Like because Bodhi is a mentor at first, and up until up until that bank robbery when Utah finally catches them and he's chasing them. So now his cover is blown. But then the next day they pretend like they don't know that he's a federal agent.
It's so
There's
good.
a whole bunch of tension. I was like, oh my God, they know. Don't go with them. They know, but he goes with them.
It's great that tension builds, and
Yeah.
the actors do such a good job. Of course, like the chase scene with when he shoots the gun in the air. I mean, it's and if you're a fan of Hot Fuzz, which is one of my favorite movies, they reference this scene in Hot Fuzz specifically, kind of the buddy action movie bromance.
Right.
So it's really dynamic performances. It really, rewatching this movie made me really sad that we don't have Patrick Swayze making movies anymore. Obviously, he passed away. I really wish we could have gotten a Swayze-sance and had him in action movies. I think we probably could have gotten a legacy sequel to this movie, which I still think they could make.
Yeah.
I'm a huge advocate that if they get Catherine Bigelow back, Keanu Reeves, and then I think Austin Butler playing Bodhi's son, I think you have a great legacy sequel. Maybe not as good as Top Gun Maverick, but I think you get Catherine Bigelow back into the action director's seat. Keanu Reeves, where he's at right now, you could get a really fun movie. But I wish Patrick Swayze was still making movies, because I think he would be really fun to see at this phase of his career. I think about Kevin Bacon, similar guy, similar era. Kevin Bacon's doing really fun, interesting projects. He's maybe not the blockbuster actor that he once was, but he's doing really interesting things.
Right.
Kind of playing with his legacy.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be interesting. Right now, I'm listening to a podcast. It's called Retromade, and in Retromade, the host goes over. She's going over most of Patrick Swayze's movies, and there are a lot of movies that it's like he's been in a bunch of movies that either indie or sort of like underground, like underserved movies. That there's one movie she watched that it's not available anywhere. It's like she just so happens to have the DVD for it, so it's not available for streaming. It's not on sale. They haven't made new copies of it. So yeah, he had been busy near the end of his life, just making a bunch of movies or appearing in certain things. So yeah, he's always been amazing. It'd be great to have him back. But man, it's amazing how we have to carry on without
I know,
without some of our favorite people. So one of my favorite parts is when Utah he identifies the wrong gang as being the actual bank robbers. So in one scene, he's being roughed up by this gang, and this gang is like they're relentless. And this is just before he meets Bodhi, or not before he meets Bodhi, but when Bodhi comes to rescue him. And so he suspects, because this gang is so belligerent, he suspects this gang of being the bank robbers. Like, of course they're the bank robbers because they're such assholes. It must be them. And I think that the movie could have did a better job of convincing the audience that these were the guys. And because it's like, for some reason, I never believed that these were the guys that were robbing the bank. These were just some guys that were picking on a brand new surfer. So then they have a stakeout. And the whole disaster when they were trying to arrest the guys, or because all they wanted to do was take the guys in. They're trying to arrest the guys from their house, but then it was all thwarted because somebody wanted to mow their lawn with the weirdest lawnmower I have ever seen. Right?
It was an electric push, old school push blade lawnmower.
Right. They call those style a real lawnmower Reel, and I only know about it because I tried to mow the lawn with that type of lawnmower, just the hand version, not the electric version, and it was nearly impossible. So, and this particular is a old style push motor, but it has a push mower, but it has some kind of motor or engine on top of it, and it was really loud, so the FBI agents couldn't communicate. So Utah could not warn. He couldn't warn Papas about the ambush that he was about to walk into, and it really wasn't an ambush. They kind of saw or suspected that they were surrounded by agents, so they started getting out their heavy artillery, and Papas was just about to walk right into it, and then all of a sudden everybody starts shooting, and that was just a great action scene. Johnny Utah got his ass whooped by a naked woman. That's just that was a fantastic scene. So I mean, she was stomping him at the end, and then he had to be rescued by somebody else. So that was just a fantastic scene all around. And then at the end, not only are they the wrong gang, but they were already under investigation by another agent from a different agency who was under deep cover. It was Tom Sizemore, I think.
Tom Sizemore, yeah, it's a great another in this movie to have him there. The DEA agent, so he's angry. I think he's like, "Do you think I like hanging out with these guys?"
Yeah. Do you think I like this hair?
That's a great performance.
They just ruined everything, and that was fantastic. This movie, well, not this movie, but Fast and the Furious gets a lot of flack for basically kind of being a copy of Point Break. I don't think they do share a lot of the same elements and some of the same beats, but I think they handle it differently enough where they're not exactly the same. So, and this is one of the things that they point out is that like the agent identifies the wrong gang, and then they have to point to the right direction. But I think the main difference is that in this movie, he just suspects that the guys that beat him up were the drug dealers. And then he later comes to realize that it wasn't this gang. It was Bodie's gang that was doing. It was like his own detective work. And then he immediately changes the investigation to Bodie. But in Fast and the Furious, it was more like the agent, like he suspected it was the gang that his mentor was in. So, but he didn't want to bust his mentor, so he almost purposely points it to a different gang. So it was kind of a different relationship in Fast and the Furious. But
because Paul Walker's character, he more like falls in love with it. And I think Johnny Utah does as a character. There's that moment after the night surf where Tyler's like, "You finally look like you're not doing a homework assignment."
Yeah.
You feel like you're so, but I think the difference is like Dom doesn't try to like kidnap one of his family. Like that's where this is interesting, because I don't know what you think about Bodie as a villain, because I think we kind of get lulled like Johnny as a character. We're like, this guy's very zen. He's got this great philosophy on life. And like, even though we know he's a bank robber, but like they're kind of like a Robin Hood type of like, screw the system, very 90s type of mentality. But to me, he's actually a pretty maniacal villain, because he's willing to kidnap and threaten his girlfriend. In the scene where he says, "Hey, what's his face has Tyler and I can't control him." He loves violence. I hate violence.
Right.
To me, that was an indication of like, oh, this is a true villain.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't really care about anybody. He just cares about the next thrill.
Yeah.
And he's actually enjoying kidnapping, and this whole thing is another thrill for him. It's not really about getting away with the money. It's like, oh, this is the next wave. This is the next thrill.
Right. Well, I don't think Tyler was his girlfriend. I think it was his ex-girlfriend.
His ex. Well, yeah, Johnny's girl.
Right.
Yeah.
It's Johnny. And he totally acknowledged it. Like he's totally, it's not like he doesn't get jealous. He doesn't give Johnny any pushback. He's like, he's totally chill with that, with their relationship. But he uses her because he knows Johnny is attached to her. So he kidnaps and basically threatens to torture his own girlfriend that his ex-girlfriend that he still likes. Like he you
Yeah,
can
she's
even
still in
say
the group. Like,
right.
yeah, she hangs
You
out
can
with
even
everybody.
say that he still loves her, but he's willing to hurt her just to hurt Johnny. I mean, not Johnny Utah, because Johnny Utah is on his tail. So yeah, very maniacal, very methodical, very what you call
He's
it?
got the crazy for sure. And
Yeah,
even that one before that chase scene on the bank where he's torching the car with the gas.
yeah,
Like, and all of his buddies are like, get in the car. You don't need to do that. But you can tell he likes just burning this vehicle.
right,
Like and even like the young kid who at the end gets killed in the last heist. He's like, why are you like, we got to go. Why are you trying to get the vault?
yeah.
It's because
He started to lose control because it doesn't um it doesn't make sense that he would break his what you call it, his routine, unless you consider
yeah,
that he's starting to go crazy at this moment. He's starting
yeah.
to lose it at this moment. So he's breaking his own rules. He's breaking his routines. He's increasing the chance that they would get caught. And he's probably doing it for the thrill of it all. He wants to feel the thrill, and he's willing to break his own rules in order to get that thrill. What's your next favorite part? I think this is number 4.
Next favorite part is the ending scene in the rain in Australia. It's just one of my favorite scenes of this movie. One of my favorite movie scenes. It's highly stylized with the rain. Like the opening of the movie starts with rain, pouring rain. It's the same thing. You have Keanu Reeves in his full denim outfit, and he finds Bodhi, and he's like, "There's no way out, man." And he lets him take on the big, giant wave that he's been pursuing. And it's like it's interesting because Utah definitely is like, hey, you blew it. Like, you broke your own code. I know you're trying to chase this high of the next big jump, the next big wave, but people died, and it's your fault. Yet he lets him essentially take his own life by trying to go on this giant wave.
Right.
And then we get the badge thrown in the water. And it's a great ending.
Yeah, I agree. Although I feel differently. I understand why Johnny would go ahead and let Bodhi ride the wave, like try to achieve his dream. But see, I feel like the ultimate punishment for all the things that Bodhi did was to deny him that dream. I wish that he had done that.
Right.
Just be means like, no, I'm not going to let you do it. No, it's like, you don't get to live your dream while you allow pretty much everybody in your band to die. Right. It's like everybody. And then, like only a couple of people survived. And like Tyler lives, but he threatened Tyler's life, like all the things that he did. And I know actually everybody did, because the guy that he rode off with,
he died in Mexico.
Right, he died in Mexico. Right, so everybody bought it except for him, and he gets to live his dreams. Like, no, you don't get to live your dream. You should suffer for what you did. But of course, he doesn't do that. He rather just let Bodhi go and basically commit suicide on this wave. And it does look like the wave just kind of ate him, right? It's like he really did buy it. He's bought it in the worst way. And I don't know if I put this in the trivia, but Swayze did get hurt surfing. So that tells me that surfing is dangerous, and you could get smashed against rocks, you could drown. Horrible things could happen to you when you're surfing. So you have to treat it with a certain amount of respect. No, I've never surfed.
Me either. I respectively probably shouldn't. I would probably fall. It would take a lot of practice.
Right.
But I love watching it. Like, I love surf documentaries are really fascinating to me, especially the big wave surf documentaries. And this is before kind of that big wave movement really kicked off. But that would be great for a legacy sequel if there were just big wave surfers. Catherine Bigelow.
Man, I can barely balance on the balance beam, so I'm not sure if I want to try. And it's like, especially not now. I used to live in Hawaii. I lived in Hawaii for about 10 years and never got curious about surfing.
Oh, that was your chance. Yeah, I think if you live there, that's your chance.
And then there's a lot of, it's like, in order to go surfing, you really kind of need your own car. I didn't have a car at the time.
Yeah.
You could probably attach your surfboard to the bus, like because they have the bike racks, so you could probably put your surfboard in the bike rack. But it's like I was never curious enough to try to do it. I didn't have a whole bunch of friends that would try to pressure me into surfing. So, and I only went to the beach like maybe 3 or 4 times the whole time I was there. And so it's literally surrounded by some of the most famous beaches in the world. And I only had been to the beach like maybe a couple of times. So
you missed your Point Break dream. Could have been Johnny Utah hanging out with a new surfing crew.
Yeah. And then, and these actors, a lot of them hadn't surfed either. So that's fair.
Yes.
So that's the thing about acting. People who don't understand the craft of acting, they tend to think that, you know, it's all easy and whatnot. For me, the hardest part is probably just remembering the lines. But then they got a fix for that. You know, some actors actually use cue cards or, you know, something. But with acting, you also have to learn certain skills. Like in order to be believable, you know, you have to learn how to fire a gun if you never fired a gun before. You have to learn how to surf if you've never done that before. Mm-hmm. You have to actually learn skills to appear at least a little bit authentic. Like you're not going to look like you know how to skydive if a professional skydiver is watching, they'll say, okay, that none of that's real. They'll look at it and like they can pick it out, even if you've rehearsed it and practiced it in order to give some authenticity to it. It's really for the layman. So it's good enough for the layman, probably not good enough for somebody who actually skydives.
Yes. But I'm going to avoid skydiving. That's not, maybe surfing one day, but skydiving, no, thank you.
The only thing that I would do is that they have a couple of indoor skydiving places where I live at. So they're really tall buildings, and they give you the simulation of skydiving. So it's, from what I understand, it's totally safe and it feels like skydiving, but it's indoors. So maybe I'd try that, but I wouldn't try it for real.
Definitely not jumping out of a plane without a parachute.
I don't want to jump out of a plane, period. If the plane, like for one thing, the only planes I take are passenger planes, and they famously don't have parachutes for all of the passengers. And if I happen to be in a plane with parachutes, my attitude is like, well, I guess I'm going to die.
If they're like, we have parachutes, they're like, well, this is not good.
Right. So you've already mentioned the last couple of things that I was going to mention. I was going to mention the chasing Ronald Reagan scene. You mentioned that, and the final scene with the arrest at Bell's Beach, and that's also one of my favorite scenes. So yeah, just, and like I said, there's going to be some convergence because this is an iconic film, so you're going to run into that. So yeah, absolutely.
They just roll right into each other.
Yeah, they just roll right into each other. So that's it for our favorite parts. Let's go on to the next segment. We're going to talk about the top 10 trivia. So I picked up this trivia off of IMDb. I did not cross-reference it. I hope that it's true. You can fact check it if you want. But as far as I know, this is all real. So why don't you start us off with the first one?
Like we mentioned, Patrick Swayze, an accomplished skydiver who did this as a hobby, was told to stop for insurance purposes. Of course, you don't want one of your lead actors jumping out of a plane. That's high risk. Once production began, producers coaxed him into agreement, the promise of letting the star actually do one skydive on screen. The uncut shot of Bodhi yelling "Adios, amigo" and falling out of the plane, which I mentioned one of my favorite parts of the movie, features Swayze actually making the jump. Unbeknownst to the producers, when not on the day's call sheet, Swayze and others would occasionally run out to an airport and go skydiving anyway. He made 55 jumps for the film. I mean, just that as your lead actor for this type of movie, I mean, it's again, it shows. When you can film someone who's comfortable jumping out of a plane, yelling a line, and filming him, it adds to an element of a movie. It really does.
And you're talking to a guy that got hurt. I don't know if he made Roadhouse before or after. I think it was before this movie. I can't remember. But he got hurt real bad in Roadhouse doing one of the stunts. He does a lot of his own stunts in most of his movies. So he's kind of an action junkie. He wants to
Yeah.
do some of this stuff, so it's kind of hard to not do it. At least for him, it's kind of hard for him not to do it,
Yeah.
not to do these
Not going to do
things.
that. Not going to jump out of a plane. Come on. Figure out the insurance.
Yeah. I think somebody like Tom Cruise, I think he's got that good insurance, or he might be self-insured. It's kind of hard to say because he's the producer and the main actor. And obviously, he's going to pay himself. He's going to pay himself that $20 million, and he probably gets a lot off the back end. So he's probably self-insured.
Yes, Tom does his own insurance.
Yeah.
Sells his own stunts.
So up next, the film was originally called Johnny Utah when Keanu Reeves was cast in the title role. The studio felt that this title said very little about surfing, and by the time Patrick Swayze was cast, the film had been renamed Riders on the Storm after the famous song by The Doors. However, the lyrics had nothing to do with the film, and so the title was also rejected. It was not until halfway through filming that Point Break became the film's title because of its relevance to surfing. I still don't know specifically what Point Break means. I know they
mentioned in the film, like he said, that beach has a great point break. So maybe it's where the break hits the point. The surf break hits the point.
I remember him saying they talk about breaks all the time. So I don't remember he said point break, like the whole phrase. So I need to go and rewatch it to see that part.
I caught it this time.
You caught it, okay.
When they're talking about, when they're looking for the different beaches that they think the surfers are hanging out.
Right.
Very subtly.
Yeah, it was subtle. But yeah, because, and I think the break is probably where the wave breaks against the sand. And there's a quality that surfers are looking for, so that must be it.
Yeah. I would have loved to hear Riders on the Storm, that song in this movie. I think that would have fit really well, being, the California movie. That would fit. They try to keep it very 90s, so I get why they didn't do that, but I would have loved to hear that song.
Just the title, just the chorus of the song "Riders of the Storm," and there's a storm going on. That would feel. Or maybe they could have just got a character. Oh, wait a minute, I don't know when the Doors were active. Yeah, maybe because they're in the 70s, right? So maybe they could have had an actor whose favorite band was the Doors, and they could have worked that song in some kind of way.
They could have.
Yeah.
That would have added to it. That's good. It's cool trivia. Here's another one. Co-producer Rick King first came up with the idea for the movie while lounging on the beach. He had been given an LA Weekly article about Los Angeles being the robbery capital of America and dreamed up a movie about an FBI agent infiltrating a surf gang that robs banks to fuel their fun. Look at just hanging out on the beach and you got an idea.
Ideas come from everywhere. Have you being that you're a genre person, have you seen what is it called? I keep the words that come to my mind is The Crow, but it's not The Crow. It's just the same imagery as The Crow. It was a series on Netflix. It was based on a comic book. It was about Morpheus, and he was Lord of the Dreams, and the Sandman. I think that's what they call it.
Oh, yes.
So it was a series on Netflix, and in one of the stories, they had like an overarching stories, and then the last couple of episodes were kind of like short stories. So in one of the short stories, there was a guy who he was like an author, but he was kind of cruel. So in order to get his comeuppance, the Sandman basically gave the author a bunch of ideas, but it was so many ideas that he couldn't contain them, and so it's like. And so it kind of drove him crazy, all the ideas he had. Just kernels that he could write a novel for, but there were so many.
Nothing to finish it.
Right. He basically had the most extreme case of OCD or something like that, because the ideas would come forth and he couldn't write about them. So
that's amazing.
But this guy, Rick King, was just sitting on the beach. Next thing you know, he dreamed up a movie. That's pretty awesome.
Not bad. Not a bad day's work.
So 2 months before filming, Keanu Reeves, Patrick Swayze, and Lori Petty trained with former world-class professional surfer Dennis Jarvis on Kauai, Hawaii. Jarvis remembers Patrick said he'd been on a surfboard a couple of times. Keanu definitely had not surfed before, and Lori had never been to the ocean in her life. And that's a quote from Dennis, and that's interesting. They were all at different levels of
Yeah,
surfing.
that must have been tough, where you have someone who is familiar, someone who is from Canada probably hasn't, and then someone who's never been to the ocean. So
Right.
that's a wide range, but it
Also,
worked out. Everyone looked good.
yeah, also to show the strength of the acting, because you buy every moment of Lori Petty's character knowing how to surf and struggling
Yeah.
to teach Johnny Utah how to surf. It all felt authentic when you watched it. So yeah, that worked extremely well.
Second unit director and stunt coordinator Glenn R. Wilder held fight training sessions for the cast on weekends because Bigelow wanted the actors to do their own fight scenes on screen without stuntmen. Anthony Kiedis was allegedly the only cast member to miss the training, so Wilder had his character knocked out in one punch during the first fight sequence, or the fist fight sequence in the movie, which is hilarious. Of course, the rock star is not going to show up to training for boot camp. It's like, nah,
Well,
I'm a
here's the
rock
thing.
star. I don't need to do that.
In the subsequent fight scenes, he seems to last longer. So I think he showed up for the other ones. It was just the first one where he didn't show up. And he was kind of upset that he gets knocked out in one punch. It's like, yeah, because you didn't show up. This has to be choreographed. It's like when you're on stage and you're dancing, you have to choreograph that. So if you want to practice and rehearse dancing on stage, being a big rock star, then you can practice and rehearse for this movie so that we can keep you longer for the scenes. Otherwise, it's just going to be, you're going to be the one punch chump. You're going to land on the ground. You're going to lay there so that the other people who rehearsed this scene can carry on an interesting fight. And I think in later scenes, you see him last a little bit longer. So he probably showed up for rehearsal after that.
He showed up. He was able to get over his rock star lifestyle. And show up.
Right. Sorry, I got lost for a second. Tyler explains to Johnny Utah that Swayze's character is named Bodie. I've rehearsed his name, and now
that's a tough one to pronounce.
Yeah. Hold on a second. Let me sound it out. Bodhisattva. Nope, that's not it. Bodhisattva. Okay, I got it. So Taylor explains to Johnny Utah that Swayze's character is named Bodhi the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is the term that in the Buddhist religion, meaning an enlightened being who, out of compassion, forgoes nirvana in order to save others. Bodhi means wakefulness. So it's a very meaningful nickname, not his natural name. Everybody in this movie has strange names. Johnny Utah is a strange name. Papa's is a strange name. Pretty much everybody has Taylor is a strange name for a girl.
It's a very strange thing. And it goes back to that like cult leader that Bodhi is, where everyone has names. But here's the deal. I don't know. Like, I think it's bull crap. I don't think any of the things that he's saying is really truthful. I don't think he really means it.
Well, I think he believes it. I think because he's a dude that is like one of his gang members get killed, and he's trying to rescue his gang members because he loves the people in his group. So I think he believes it, but he's misguided. Like
that's true. I guess it's misguided. He's taking the Zen Buddhism and using it as an excuse to rob banks.
Right. The other thing is when he finally allows Tyler to go, like near the end, and he leaves Tyler and Utah to go with his other gang member. The guy that he tried to rescue, the one he threw out the plane that was bleeding to death, he died, and he wanted to stay behind and bury him. And his partner was like, no, we got to go. We don't have time to bury this dude. We have to go. And they basically left him in the desert. So he definitely has compassion for the people he loves, but he's very much misguided on how he applies his philosophy.
That's a good way to put it. Speaking of Bodhi, Patrick Swayze cracked 4 ribs while filming the surfing scene. So we mentioned that, the dangers of surfing, and he put it all on the line for this movie.
I did not know surfing was that dangerous.
It's a lot of water. It's crashing. So, yeah.
Bigelow fought to have Reeves cast as Johnny Utah, insisting that she wouldn't film the movie without him. The studio and producers were interested in looking at higher profile actors at the time, like Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp would have fit pretty well in this movie. And I also saw in the trivia some of the other people they considered. And all of them would have done well. But I'm glad they had Keanu Reeves show up and take up this mantle.
Agreed. Swayze was not the one wearing the Reagan mask during the foot chase sequence. Instead, his stunt double Scott Wilder performed the scene because Swayze was in Europe doing press for Ghost.
Wow.
Interesting, because that's such a iconic scene, and we know Swayze loves to do his own stunts and probably would have done them. But hey, when you got a mask, it's pretty easy to throw in a stunt double.
Right.
That's the nice thing about that.
The thing that I immediately thought about when I read this was The Mandalorian. So famously you had
yes,
and the latest season of The Mandalorian, what's his name? The actor that plays the titular character. Yeah. He apparently there was a stunt double in there for most of the time, and he just did the voice work. So I was like, "Don't ruin the movie magic for me."
But hey, yeah, I mean, as an actor, that's great. Just do voice work,
right.
Recognition.
Look, he's the same height, he's the same weight, he's the same build. He can do it.
Easy,
right? So, when Bodhi was introduced to Johnny Utah on the beach, he remarks that Utah's surfboard made him think of or reminds him of a 57 Chevy that he used to have. Swayze previously drove a 57 Chevy in Dirty Dancing, a movie that I saw and do not remember. I included it because people love this tiny bit of trivia.
Yeah, that's a good one. That is a good one.
So that's it for the trivia. And now let's find out what the critics thought about this movie. So we're here with the critics' thoughts. The critics on Rotten Tomatoes have it at 69%. The audience score was 79%. And on IMDb reviews, it was 7.3 out of 10, which is very high when you consider IMDb. So why don't you let us know what the first two critics thought about this?
Yeah, Sarah Medina from Cinephilia said, it just has an interesting start with the duel between Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze, but its police plot often drags within a series of cliches that take away from the intrigue effect from its beach, robbery, and surfing agenda.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that.
I don't agree with that. I think they actually don't. There's not a lot of scenes where the only scene where they're kind of like doing police work is they have Chinese food and Coronas and they're like pretending to surf. Like there's not a lot of that like police procedural stuff baked in this movie. It's very much just part of the surrounding. Like we don't have a lot of those scenes. So I disagree with that.
And then the only time you really see it is that, the boss is like yelling at his subordinates or talking really fast at his he talks at people, he doesn't talk to people, right? So
and it's one of the best, it's a funny scene because Utah's sort of like in his character with the surfboard, and it's like very humorous because he's not the guy that we saw at the start of the movie where he's got the suit and he's all wants to be the starting quarterback. He's now transformed into a surf bum. So I disagree with that, but to each your own. Right. Savina Petkova from A Good Movie to Watch says the Reeves-Swayze duo here belongs in the pantheon of equally hot frenemies, providing an apt but subtle comment on the dangers of toxic masculinity. I agree with this. Yes, we talked about this duo, and it's just they're great frenemies, and there's that bromance kind of love-hate, but also again that toxic masculinity of trying to one-up each other.
Well, also, Swayze just plain old toxic because of how he treats his former love interest.
yes. What's mine is yours. That is not a line that's aged well.
Right. But also, another thing is that how he'll just show up in your house and say like, all right, let's go. We're going to go surfing. Or that, and then he kind of expects you to follow him. That's a little bit toxic too.
It is funny because Johnny Utah was a former football player, and it does kind of remind you of kind of like old school locker room football hazing, but it's different because they're surf bros and adrenaline junkies. So it's a bit different, but similar type of style of communication and toxic masculinity.
Jeff Brown from the Times UK, he wrote, Keanu Reeves boringly cocky FBI agent goes undercover, and off the film lurches into narrative gobbledygook surfing and the spiritual utterances of a tan guru, Patrick Swayze. You know what? We like that stuff, Jeff. I don't.
That's what I want. Give that to me all day, baby.
Right. That's why we went and watched the movie. Maybe it's because he's from the UK. He doesn't understand.
Yeah, that sounds very stuffy.
Right. And then Brian Eggert from Deep Focus Review wrote, "This exhilarating movie runs on overdrive, offering an excess of stylish sequences and over-the-top performances that feel heightened by the radical and extreme behaviors on display." So, yeah, I agree.
Again, that's what we're there for. It does have this over-the-top style, from the cinematography to the dialogue, which you mentioned, but also the premise. And that's why it's fun. That's why it's an enjoyable movie.
And it's kind of an introduction to one of these extreme sports. I don't know how extreme surfing is considered, but it does have a relationship with like skateboarding or snowboarding. It is kind of the same thing. It feels like it's in that family somewhere.
Yeah, it's in that extreme sports genre.
And most people don't have access to a beach where they could, do this sort of thing. So yeah, it's I feel like it's a fairly decent representation of that lifestyle, especially when you get into the lingo and the attitudes and like Bodie in particular, it's almost like a bohemian philosophy of how he wants to live his life. Like screw the system. Or I'm pretty sure a lot of surfers feel that way, but then most of them have families and jobs.
Trust me, when I've been to California, those dudes they're just surfing because they have a lot of money and they live near the beach. There's a mix of those cultures. It's not all just for radical dudes. It's a lot of like rich middle-aged tech bros as well are doing that.
Right, absolutely. So finally, Point Break is, as of this recording, available on streaming on Paramount Plus. So I didn't have to dig out my DVD. So one of the things I had to do was I dug out the PlayStation, because I needed something to play the DVD on. And as it turns out, didn't have to do that because they had it on Paramount Plus. So that was awesome. But also, since I did go through the trouble of digging out the PlayStation, I went on ahead and played some downloadable combat for Mortal Kombat 1. I finally got to play Homelander, and I suck at playing Homelander, so I won't be using him as my main. So that's it for today. Next week, I'm joined by the sweet, beautiful, and ambitious individual known as Stephanie Graham, an artist in the film industry who gets nosy about other artists on our podcasts, Nosy as Fuck, with no, actually, that's not the name of her show. Her show is, I just have a tendency to curse. The name of her show is Nosy AF with Stephanie Graham. she's a little bit more
We know
polite.
what it means, wink, wink.
We know what that means.
We know what it means, Stephanie. We know what you're doing.
You can follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Don't forget that you can contact us with any questions, comments, suggestions, or anything else at fanmail@backlickcinema.com. Luke, do you have any additional plugs?
You can follow me on Instagram at Luke H. Ferris, and then you can follow Least Important Things wherever you get your podcast, YouTube, and TikTok. So Least Important Things and at Luke H. Ferris.
Is Luke H. Ferris also on Threads?
Threads as well. Don't go on my Twitter. It did get hacked, so but I was. And I cannot get Twitter support to figure it out. So that's a different story.
You can forget about Twitter support. They don't.
So if you see Luke H. Ferris putting a bunch of like cryptocurrency content out there, that is not me. That is definitely not me. That is someone who hacked my account. So yeah, follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. And then Least Important Things on TikTok.
Awesome. One last time, if you like this show, then please help us grow by spreading the word about Backlick Cinema Podcast. Believe me, it matters. I know that you've enjoyed our guest, Luke Ferris, so please check out Least Important Things. I've been Zoe Richardson. Be safe, share a movie from yesteryear with your family, hug your loved ones, and if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.